It was a holiday with a difference, because Isabella and her sister Anna, who's sitting down there, were on a journey to discover. I'll give Anna a bit of a welcome. She's all the way from Perth just to be here. Via Italy. See, Anna and Isabella were on a journey to discover more about the Italian side of their family. And it was fascinating. My role, I was not sure, was not clearly defined. But I was enjoying the discovery. And somehow I got confused with the connection of the so many people that I met. I mean, it was slightly bizarre at times. Walking alongside a lagoon in Orbitello on the Tuscan coast, and a man is fishing, and Isabella says, "Oh, I wonder is he catching anything?" And he waves over and says, "Isabella!" Now, that's a pretty poor Italian accent, but you know where I'm coming from. "Isabella, your cousin Roberto." Now, where does that happen? Only in Donegal. And it was wonderful, and then he showed us photographs of Orbitello, beautiful, beautiful photo. And I can't even begin to describe Orbitello. You'd have to see it to understand it. It's something like Tirnanog. Do you know what Tirnanog is? Yeah, okay. I was worried about that. I just thought I said it in the wrong place for a minute. Anyway, and we met so many other people that Isabella and Anna, we hadn't seen since they were 11 or 12 years of age. And here we were dining around the table in a beach house with all this extended family. People who hadn't seen each other since they were that. It was incredible. And this beach house was just about standing up. And it had a tiny kitchen, if it even had a kitchen. And yet, out of that beach house, only Italians can do this, was a 7-course lunch. I ate so much of the antipasta, I thought that was it. And next thing comes fish, and a different drink with every course. That bit I really like. And cousin Michaela, he insisted on telling me, I don't know, see, he just kept telling me, I look like Elton John. I can't see it. I thought I was more Mo Molan. But he persisted telling me I looked like Elton John. So I couldn't think, like the only Italian I could think of, I said, you look like Al Pacino. And he glared at me and said, I do not look like Al Pacino. And he mentioned some Italian comic that he looked like, who I had to pretend, oh yeah, him, he's very funny. Anyway, I'm not going on too much about that, because I want to get into I'm still digesting it, along with the 7-course meal. And I'll talk about that later on. Over the next few weeks, I'll talk a little bit about that experience, because it is incredible to suddenly, for Isabella and Anna, to discover, yes, we've got family, in a not in an abstract sense, but in a real sense that you didn't really fully remember that you had. And suddenly you discover you've got living family in a place called Orbitello, which I'll talk about later on. Not today. I'm only going to stay up here for 2 hours. And of course, while I was there, I told you I read this little book by a chap called Luke, and good read. Might recommend it to the book club. And I also read the book club book by Wes Streeting. Wes Streeting is the Shadow Secretary for Health. And he's a fabulous guy. Fabulous guy. Grew up in the East End of London, tough upbringing. He had 2 uncles, one of them, both called Billy. And one of the Billies was a good man, brought Wes to church as a little fella. The other Billy was never out of prison. So he chose his career paths on looking at his two Uncle Billies, or two Grandfather Billies, and chose the first. And now he's, watch Wes Streeting. I think he's going to be quite something. And as I said, I read the Gospel according to Luke, which I kind of hope to read over a period of time, the four Gospels again. Because you see, you do all this study when you're training to be minister. And you go through all the Gospels, and you go through all the books of both the Old and New Testament. And you do it for an academic point of view. And then it's always worth going back and reading to see, what is it really about? And see, is there other things you can learn from it? Now, the other thing we visited, I'm slipping back into the holiday mode for a moment. The other thing we visited were these stumbling stones. Have people heard about these stumbling stones? I know, Alan, you're nodding in agreement. There's a German artist, and he has created these little brass stumbling stones, and they're being placed all over Europe to people who died at the hands of the Nazis. And usually there is one where in the town or outside the house where that person died. So watch out for them when you're touring Italy, Germany, or any part of Europe. For they're little brass plates with the name of the person who died. And of course, one was Albo Bellucci, which I mentioned before. And Albo Bellucci was a cousin of Isabella and Anna's father. And in the centre of a town called Grosseto, outside the town hall, there are three stumbling stones, one of them dedicated to Albo Bellucci. So we laid a single poppy beside that stumbling stone to remember Albo, because he died. He was a partisan fighting against the Nazis, and he died in Mauthausen concentration camp in 1945. But as I said, I'll talk about a lot of that in other sermons. However, when flying back from Pisa to Dublin, guess who we bumped into? Storm Agnes. She was waiting for us. Storm Agnes. And it was quite an experience. I have never really experienced the like of it. The plane, it shook and it creaked. I never realized the plane would creak that much. It sounded like a wooden barge or something as it was creaking as the storm was hitting. And people were growing tense and nervous, but trying not to scream, because in front of me was a 9-month-old baby who was standing up, smiling at everyone, thinking, isn't this great fun? And we were like, anyway, the plane circled. You know the way the plane, has anybody ever had this experience? Yeah. The plane circles and circles, and you think, oh, it just landed, and he's circling. Obviously the pilot knows better than us that he will pick an opportune time to land the plane. And then he decided, I'm going to land in Dublin. Dublin Airport. Well, naturally Dublin Airport, where it's not on Collins Street. And anyway, the plane is coming into land, and it's shaking and rattling and everything. Really shaking and rattling. It's gone moving side to side. Everybody's got their head down, you know the way, deep head down in prayer. Everybody, even the atheists. When I surprised myself, I completely surprised myself. I didn't pray, I texted. And Hannah, it was you I was texting about the baptism. And I could have been on my last second texting you. There I was texting away. And I got surprised myself. And you wouldn't expect a minister to pray under those circumstances. But I didn't, I texted. And Isabella reminded me, yes, I know what you're thinking, why was he texting on a plane? I forgot all about that and I found a signal. And you don't lose a signal when you can find it in obscure places. And I got told off later on, never do that again. Never. And then I wondered, why was it called Storm Agnes? Up hands those who know. Now the surprise. You get one. Why was it called Storm Agnes? You put up your hand.
They get labelled alphabetically, so the first storm of the year begins with an A, and they choose a name beginning with A, and then the next one will begin with B, and so.
See, Gareth looks like a person that would know this, but he's completely wrong. Storm Agnes is called after Agnes Mary. Oh, maybe you know, you could be right. But it's called after this Agnes, is Agnes Mary Clark, an Irish astronomer and science writer who died in 1907. But you might be right, they might do it in alphabetical order.
They do. They do.
Who agrees with Gareth?
Yes, they do.
Can I have this recorded?
Who agrees with me? Okay, Gareth, you take the second. Right, we move on. Now for the religious bit. Storms have a good way of making us focus, especially if we're on a plane. We try to get ourselves to safe ground. And that's funny because, oh yeah, I didn't tell you, because you see, when he couldn't land, he didn't land. I forgot I left that. He took off again. And of course that made matters worse. And then he circled a bit more and he said, we're going to Belfast. And immediately the first thing that jumped into my head, I don't have my Belfast keys with me. Hopefully Isabella has hers, because then we can stay in Belfast. But however, they didn't let us off the plane and he made his way back to Dublin. But when we're in a storm, we try to get ourselves to safe ground, away from the dangers of falling trees or flood-filled roads. Now, we only have to look around, even Europe, or on our television, to see the devastation in other countries, where homes are washed away, where hundreds of lives are lost amongst the terrible destruction of storms. We are fortunate here in a way that other than some turbulence, few trees falling, electricity goes off, usually in Galway. That's about it. But also, I like the idea of a storm because when you come out of it, I actually was slightly elated when we got off the plane in Dublin Airport. I was slightly elated. I thought, I've been through that now, and that's not an experience I've had. Because we can have storms in our own lives. A storm with family breakdown. Storms with tensions between you and others. Fear. And even as we meet here today, there's fear about the confusing interregnum that we find ourselves in present here in Northern Ireland. Lack of governance. The pollution of Lough Neagh, which is terrible. The decline in our health service. The uncertainty of what is happening around us. Nobody seems to have a sense of direction. And that can be a storm can be a metaphor of all that can be combined and make us fearful. Sometimes, but not always, if we are people of faith, we seek shelter in our belief. We hope our strength in our faith will provide protection, or at least be a comfort blanket to us. Remember when you were a child and you had your comfort blanket and you brought it everywhere with you? Or was that just me?
No.
And I stopped when I was about 25. And it was something that you knew that was always with you. So your faith can be that comfort blanket. It can be shelter to get you through the storm. The storm of fear, tension, loss. Your faith will be a shelter and a shade. And shade from the heat of the day, except in Orbetello in Italy. There you need to get under an umbrella. And a refuge, and a hiding place from rain. The heat, in Isaiah, it says the heat is not really an issue for us, but the rain and the wind. But we equally need to calm the querulous disagreement on so many things. Not by a bland consensus, but an inclusive and compassionate approach, each to the other, each to every one of us. I was reading about Charlie Flanagan this morning. Charlie Flanagan was a government minister in Dublin. He was government minister for health, for foreign affairs, and for justice. And he's stepping down because he's been 36 years serving in the Irish Parliament. A fine man, good politician, and a good man. But he said, and he used this term, that in politics, in discourse today, there is a tempest. There is a lack of respect, each for the other. Stormy relationships. Enforced agendas. An unwillingness to listen to each other. Shouting each other down in order to get our way. And it saddened him deeply, because he said it was hard to serve his people in those circumstances. In Scripture, there is the image of Jesus calming the storm, which to me is a clear sign of calming the storms of our lives, calming the storms of our exchange, our relationships with each other. After preaching near the Sea of Galilee, Jesus and his apostles took a boat to the opposite shore to find some time and solitude to rest. And as they crossed, winds so great shook and rattled the boat, just like an Aer Lingus Boeing jet. The apostles were not texting. They were terrified. They were convinced that this was the end. They would die. And Jesus told the storm, "Be calm. Be calm." Now, in this age of science, technology, etc., many people say, "I'm not sure that Jesus can stand up and say, 'Be calm,' and the storm stops, and the wind calms, and the sea rests." But that's not what it's about. It's the symbolism of Jesus and his love for us, bringing calmness to our lives, no matter how stormy things are around us. The symbolism behind this story is calming the storms that we all confront, probably every day in some minute way, in other days in a bigger way that is overpowering. And no matter how they manifest themselves. And we know, and we can learn, that we don't have to do it on our own. We don't have to do it on our own. In those stormy times, we can reach out to each other. We can find friendship, love, companionship, reaching out to each other. It's an imperative for those who see ourselves as people of faith, who see ourselves as Christians in the use of that word, that we help each other to calm the storm in each other's lives. Amen.